Thank you, Mr. Parker. As we are resuming the recording of tonight's OCM, I will go through and do a roll call of councillors. Councillor Bias, Councillor Atwell, are you in attendance?
Yes, I am, Madam President.
Thank you. Councillor Bias, are you in attendance?
Present, Madam President.
Thank you. Councillor Coles, are you in attendance?
I am, thanks, Madam President.
Thank you. Councillor D'Agostino, are you in attendance?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Duggan, are you in attendance? Councillor Duggan, are you in attendance?
Sorry, present, thanks, Madam.
Thank you. Councillor Singh, are you in attendance?
Yes, thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councillor Strange, are you in attendance?
Present, Madam President.
Thank you. Councillor Strawtons, are you in attendance?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. And of course, I am here. In relation to item 10.4.1, Equine Advisory Group Racing Industry Vacancy Appointment, the council has voted 6-3 to appoint applicant 4 to the Equine Advisory Group. Item 10.4.2, Serpentine Jarrahdale Library Services Branding. Can I please have a mover for the motion?
Madam President.
Singh, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Just a quick question about the attachments, which says 10.4.2 attachment 1 and 10.4.2 attachment 2. This just I missed those attachments, or because the email that came from Mandy, I couldn't see any attachments. Did I miss or anyone else noted that? Thank you.
Mr. Martin, are you able to?
Madam President, I'm looking at the I'm looking on the Shire's webpage, and there's 10.4.1 is an attachment and attachment 2. So on the web page, Madam President, attachment 1 is the Creative ADM Serpentine Jarrahdale Library Services brand, and attachment 2 is the brand recommended by staff, which is the circle with some dots around it with a very, creative description of the brand, with all due respect to the brand designers. So that's the attachment that's there. Is that what you're meaning, Councillor Singh?
You talking about Shire's web page? I'm just talking about the email that comes from Mandy with all the council agenda and all the confidential attachment. Is those attachment?
It wasn't a confidential attachment. I might just ask the Manager of Governance if he can help me out with the answer to this question.
Yeah, sure. Like all the other attachments that are not confidential, the attachments for that item would have been available in the web link that was provided to all councillors.
Councillor Singh, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Thank you for the answer, Paul and.
Councillors, can I have a mover for this motion, please? Councillor Duggan, did you have a question?
It wasn't so much a question, but I was just going to say that I actually had those attachments open in front of me, so I definitely in that file it got sorted out.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Can I please have a mover for the motion before us?
Yeah, Madam President, it's Councillor Coles. I'm happy to move option number 2, and that is the branding that's in attachment 1.
Madam President, Councillor Strange, I'm happy to second that.
But just so I'm clear, Councillor Coles has moved option 2 as on page 134 of the report. That's right. Yeah, what's on the screen? Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Mr. CEO. So it's the logo of the book, not the Apple-looking logo.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Councillor Strange, is there anybody opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously.
And Councillor Coles, could we ask for a reason for the difference of the officer recommendation for the minutes, please?
I'm trying to think the right way to put it, Paul. Basically, the intent is it's a better logo. It looks like a book as opposed to an apple. So perhaps the logo reflects the purpose of the library. Maybe
Perfect.
that could be good. Yeah, is that all right? Something along those lines. Anyway, there's smarter people there than me, but basically it just looks better. It's a book as opposed to a circle. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 10.4.3, Strategic Community Plan Major Review 2021-2022 Approach. Can I please have a mover for the motion?
Madam President, Councillor Coles, I'm happy to move option 3.
Happy to say it's Councillor Duggan. I'm happy to second.
Thank you, councillors. Is there anybody opposed to option 3 as before us? Councillor Strange, do you have a question?
I did have a question. Thank you, Madam President. I'm not opposed, but I am hoping to amend the motion slightly by adding a 0.6. Can I move that proposed amendment now?
Yes, you can, Councillor Strange.
Yep. So the proposed amendment would be to add a 0.6, requests the Chief Executive Officer prepare a report informing Council as to the ongoing relevance of the SJ 2050 document prior to finalising any further review of our strategic community plan.
Now, can we just ask you to read that again slowly for the minute secretary to ensure she captures correctly, please, yep. Councillor Strange?
So 0.6, requests the Chief Executive Officer prepare a report informing Council as to the ongoing relevance of the SJ 2050 document prior to finalising any further review of our strategic community plan.
It's fucking Commodore she sent me.
Excuse me, Councillor Coles. Can councillors please refrain from speaking when other councillors have the floor, and please put their microphones on mute. Councillor Strange, are you happy with what is on the screen in front of us?
Yes, I am, Madam President. Thank you.
I am happy to second that motion. Is there anybody opposed to this motion?
Sorry, can I just ask a question? Apologies before. Now, my understanding is we've got a live motion that was moved and seconded. Doesn't the mover and the second have to agree with the amendment?
No, we've had a councillor move the amendment, and the amendment has been seconded, so we now vote on the amendment.
Hang on, but haven't we got a live motion? And then there was a mover and a seconder, and then we had another councillor. If we would just scroll up. So moved councillor Cole, second councillor Duggan. So we had that as a motion that was moved and seconded. Then we've had another councillor add to it. I thought my understanding of the meeting processes and procedures is if there's a live motion that's been moved and seconded and there's an amendment, then that has to be agreed to by the mover and the seconder.
Madam President, would you like me to clarify that?
Yes, Mr. Martin, can you please clarify for Councillor Coles?
Councillor Coles is right in a respect. There's two ways that a motion can be amended. One is with the consent of the mover and seconder. The second is that a councillor can just move an amendment to the motion, which is what Councillor Strange is doing here. And then the council has been seconded, obviously, by Councillor Rich. The council would then debate that amendment, whether that amendment gets added to the motion. So there's an opportunity for debate and voting on that. And depending whether that's agreed to by the council to be added, then the whole motion, the substantive motion, gets considered in its entirety through the normal debate process. So there's two ways of doing it. We haven't done many amendments before in the past, but it's certainly an option available which Councillor Strange has exercised here. The only proviso would be that it's the Shire President's determination that the amendment does not negate the original motion. So I presume because Councillor Rich has seconded that, she doesn't think it negates the original motion, and therefore the council, now that there's a mover and a seconder to the amendment, would need to consider the amendment on its merits about whether the amendment gets added to the motion. Does that answer your question, Councillor Coles?
Yep, thanks, Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Is there anybody opposed to the amendment as before us on the screen? Motion is carried unanimously. The amendment now forms part of the substantive motion. We return to the substantive motion as before us, as moved by Councillor Coles and seconded by Councillor Duggan. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 10.4.4, Equine Advisory Group recommendation. I am happy to move this motion. Can I have a seconder, please?
Councillor Atwell, I'll second.
Madam President, I had a question. Sorry, when you came. Sorry.
Councillor D'Agostino, you have a question?
I do. So I'm just going to find my notes. Yeah, it was the question was whether we and just a proposal to amend the resolution slightly to what I'd like to see is that the Shire President and the CEO have the meeting with the Harness Club and then come back to the council, because I think it's very important. Oh, sorry, I was just wondering. Sorry, I'll rephrase it. Would the mover, which is yourself, Madam President, consider amending the resolution to allow that the matter come back to the council for consideration after the meeting is undertaken in partner one, in paragraph 1?
Councillor D'Agostino, what purpose do you see that in serving?
I think it's fundamental and critical to understand what exactly the tenure arrangements are there. For example, just hypothetically, and I've got no idea what they are, but if there was, say, 2 years to go with their lease with Rawa, then I think that would be we would consider this materially different to whether they had a longer term, just picking a number, 30-year lease with Rawa. And I think that would then, really, for myself as a council, I think that'd be very pertinent to understand, because I think that would be very relevant to the strategy and the approach that we would have when we go to the minister. So I personally would like to see, or to ask your consideration for an amendment to this resolution to effectively just have paragraph 1 and then to revert back and report back to the Shire, so we're all informed on that, and that will then help us strategise and consider the best way forward to approach the minister on what is a very, very important meeting.
I agree, Councillor D'Agostino, it is a very important meeting, and the reason that this recommendation has come from the Equine Advisory Group is because they saw it as being important. There has been ongoing information that differs from what Serpentine Jarrahdale has been informed of, which needs to be clarified, and the only person or the only office that can clarify that is the Minister's office. So my view is that we need to meet with the trotting, Byford Trotting and Training Complex members. We need to speak with them, and then we need to be able to find out from the Minister and his office of what the government's intention for the Byford Trotting Complex is moving forward. So my preference is for this motion to stand as it is, so that we can actually gain clarification for the members that actually use that facility.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor D'Agostino. Is there any councillor opposed to this motion?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, Councillor D'Agostino. As the mover, I'll open the debate. There has been ongoing commentary from other areas of the Peel region over a number of years as to the status and the retention of the Byford Trotting Complex moving forward. Serpentine Jarrahdale on a number of occasions have asked pertinent questions when this information has been put forward by those other areas and been given information that counters that. I think it's about time that we actually get a solid response from the Minister's office for the members of the Byford Trotting Complex, so that we actually know what, as a Shire, we are dealing with the Byford Trotting Complex. We'll then have an idea of what we need to do moving forward for our community. So I actually think this is a very good motion that has come before us as a council, and it gives us the opportunity to gain those answers for our community. Councillor Atwell, would you like to speak or reserve?
No, I'll reserve. Thanks, Madam President.
Thank you. Councillor D'Agostino.
Thanks, Madam President. I think we're in furious agreement on the importance and the necessity to drill down a little bit further and to understand exactly what the longer term game is here. I suppose what I would like to see and that's why I'll foreshadow an alternative motion if this motion is defeated. And my alternative motion would be along the lines of effectively exactly the same as what's been proposed by Madam President, but a two-step process where, and perhaps with a bit of community overlay. The one thing that has always sort of concerned me a little bit from a distance about the area is whether we would be able to undertake some community consultation with the landholders in the discrete area that is the Bryford Trotting and Training Complex, and we know exactly who they are, and there's probably I think less than 100. There's not that many of them, and it would be very interesting to understand exactly what their intentions or what their views and objectives are in the longer term before we went to the minister. So I would foreshadow an alternative motion that has paragraph 1 exactly as it is, and then with an amendment that the CEO and the Shire President report back to the to the council, and then paragraph 2 that there be perhaps an element of there be some community consultation, and then paragraph 3 after that the council may then consider the Shire President and the CEO meeting with the minister. So it's just phased. It's very much the same in substance, but it's doing it in a more phased and measured way and an informed way. I mean, there's nothing worse, and I think in practical terms, if the Shire President and the CEO go to meet with the minister, they might, they really need the mandate of the council in terms of understanding, or for the minister's going to say, well, what's the Shire's position on this? We don't even have a resolved formal position. I know there's been some discussion and the like, but I don't know if we have a resolved formal position. And I just think it would look a whole lot more professional, and I think it would make our position have a lot more substance if we, when we went to the minister, had a formal resolution from the Shire, assuming that was achieved, that we support the long-term arrangements and the long-term future of the Bryford Trotting Training Complex. So I think it's an excellent motion. I think there's a lot of important issues, but I just have some serious concerns with how the motion is drafted, and I think there could be some improvement that would help not only I think would help the ratepayers. I think it would help the Bryford Trotting and Training Complex, and I think it would reflect better on the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor D'Agostino. Is there anybody that would like to speak for the motion? In closing for this motion, Councillor D'Agostino, I hear what you're saying, and one of the biggest things that I have struggled with is what I consider and see to be the lack of understanding of what will happen to the trotting complex area and the landholders within that area if the government sell the trotting complex off and it no longer exists as a trotting complex. It is not something that they will leave there as an equine facility. If the government, through the sale of the TAB, decide that they are going to close and sell the Bryford Trotting Complex, that is it, gone, done and dusted. It will no longer exist. The land uses within that area without the trotting complex to support the trotting complex then becomes questionable in what it is. We need to be able to gain a solid answer, if we can, from the Minister's office over what the government's future plans for the trotting complex in Bryford is. My belief is that this is the best way forward for that to happen, so that we actually have something to work with moving forward. I'm happy to send this item to the vote. Councillor Atwell, are you for or against the motion?
For the motion, Madam President.
Thank you. Councillor Bias, are you for or against the motion?
For the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Coles, are you for or against the motion?
Against. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor D'Agostino, are you for or against the motion?
Against the motion, Madam President.
Thank you. Councillor Duggan, are you for or against the motion?
Against.
Sorry, Councillor Duggan, I can't hear you very well.
Against the motion. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Singh, for or against the motion?
For the motion. Thanks, Madam President.
Thank you. Councillor Strange, for or against the motion?
For the motion. Thanks, Madam President.
Thank you. Councillor Strawtons, for or against the motion?
For the motion.
Thank you. I am for the motion. Motion is carried 6-3. Thank you, councillors.
Madam President.
Madam President, can we please record the votes?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Bias.
And Madam President, while that occurs, I neglected to ask Councillor Coles for a reason for the difference on the officer's recommendation on item 10.4.3. My apologies. So with your indulgence, I'd like us just to go back to 10.4.3 and just ask Councillor Coles for a reason for the difference in the officer's recommendation on the major review, please.
Madam President, Councillor Strange here. I'm happy to assist with that reason if Councillor Coles would be happy with hearing, I guess, because it was my amendment, what my reason was, if that assists.
Yeah, look, my intention was to save the $100,000, but if Councillor Strange wants to add to that, that's fine.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. My reason for the addition of point 6 was to highlight any opportunity to streamline the Shire's corporate planning framework.
And to save $100,000.
Okay, yeah. And to save $100,000. Are you happy with that wording then, Councillor Coles?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Councillor Strange. But I think it's important we put in there the saving to the ratepayers. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Strange. That's good.
Thank you.
Mr. Martin, I have a question in regards to the reasoning put forward by Councillor Coles. With the stating of their saving of $100,000, once this item comes back to council and a major strategic review is to be undertaken, would council then have to spend $100,000 or thereabouts to actually implement this review at a later date?
Madam President, I guess it'll depend on the method that council chooses to do a major strategic review in the future, and that might depend on what the government's requirements are going forward. I guess if I answered that, I'd be indicating what a future council decision might be. So there'll be some cost for doing it in the future. As to the amount, I guess it depends on the methodology chosen.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Item 10.4.5, Draft Equine Trails Master Plan, release for public comment. Can I please have a mover for this motion?
Councillor Stroughton's here. I'll happy to move the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Stroughton's. Can I please have a seconder for this motion?
Yeah,
I'm happy to second. Thank you. Is there anybody opposed to this motion?
Could I just ask a question of the Deputy CEO, please?
Yes, thank you, Councillor D'Agostino.
It relates to the time period of 60 days. I'm just trying to map this out in my mind because obviously it's a very important, long-awaited document. So if hypothetically, if the resolution is passed tonight, as per the officer's recommendation, when would it be advertised, most likely?
Director?
Thank you, through the chair. We would put the public notice together, so the public notice would look to go in next week's paper. And so we would open the public comment period next week.
Which is going to be, and I'm just trying to, so it'd be around the 1st of April or something like that, roughly.
Roughly, through the chair.
And the proposal is for 60 days, which will take us to the end of May. And then the proposal is to get it into the June meeting. And the nub of my concern is really that on such an important document, I just think it would be, well, I'm just imagining, and as we hear repeatedly of the extensive workload on staff, that, you know, I'm just worried it's a bit of a rush, and I'd like to perhaps consider, ask the proposer of the resolution to consider whether an amendment to July 2022 for bringing this to council would be possible, given what I think is a very tight time frame. So my question, Deputy CEO, is just in terms of your thoughts on the time frame, given the materiality and the likely large number of submissions.
Thank you, through the chair. I think it will really depend on what kind of submissions we get back. There has been quite a bit of consultation with community and with stakeholders done already, so it's not going to be the first time that they've discussed or heard of concepts. You know, a lot of people were able to attend the workshop. So it's unknown until we go out for public comment as to how much we're going to get back. If we get a lot back, then certainly it will take me a bit longer to go through it. But this motion, it is achievable for June. I think, you know, we haven't, I mean, it could surprise me, but we haven't yet with any of our documents had a significant change to them in draft form, and the preparation of the report itself is something that can be done fairly easily. It's just a matter of what comes back through.
So answer your question, Councillor D'Agostino?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any councillor opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 10.4.6, Seniors Bus Excursion Consultation. Can I please have a mover for the motion, please?
Madam President, Councillor Coles, I'll just get my page up. I'd like to move, I think it's option number 2, please.
Councillor Coles, can you please read out what that is?
Sure. That council notes outcomes of the seniors bus excursion consultation. Requests the CEO provide one seniors bus excursion for the 21-22 financial year within the remaining budget allocation, ceasing all other senior initiatives in the current financial year, and list the seniors bus excursion program for consideration in the 22-23 budget process.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Can I please have a seconder for option 2 as put forward by Councillor Coles?
Councillor Duggan, I'm happy to second, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Councillor Bias, you have a question?
Not opposed, Madam President, but I do have a question for the Deputy CEO. The motion notes the cancellation of the ceasing all other senior initiatives for the current financial year. Can the Deputy CEO just clarify what all of those initiatives that we would effectively be cancelling are?
Director?
Thank you, through the chair. I actually would have to take that on notice to see what is left. We're in March, April, May, June, so we've just got a little bit left. I know we've already done our seniors garden party. So I don't think that we have any major events coming up that would be associated with our seniors at this point. At the moment, it's more the smaller things such as providing assistance with the Service WA app.
Thank you, Director. Is there anybody opposed to this motion?
Councillor Singh, I oppose this motion. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Coles, would you like to open debate, please?
Hey, yeah, I would. Thanks, Madam President. So this is something that came to light probably maybe 5 or 6 months ago. In fact, it may well have been around the 2021 election where something was put on Facebook, and I engaged with the ratepayer in relation to that, and there was some concern about what was actually happening with the seniors bus excursion. So the wheels, pardon the pun, but the wheels, I guess, started turning in relation to this when I asked, after getting re-elected, about what was happening. And this was to come to council last month in February, but due to a particular issue, it was deferred. In any event, so here we are now. So the survey was done, and I think that's a good thing. We talk about community consultation. I think it's quite difficult for us as non-individuals to act on behalf of the community without that consultation. And I think the consultation really does speak for itself, notwithstanding there was only 104 responses, which, depending on your point of view, that could be a fairly significant response or not. I probably would suggest it's about average for the surveys we have in the Shire. But in any event, the key thing for me is that 57%, so roughly 60 people, indicated that they would be highly likely to attend if the Shire reintroduced the seniors bus excursion program. And then 30% of those said they may attend. So I guess 87% said they would, or highly likely, or may attend, which is a fairly overwhelming response to the benefit of the excursion. So that's one thing. The other point I would make is that we need, as councillors, need to look after our seniors. It's been pretty tough, I think, for everyone in the community of late, especially with COVID and other like events. But I think it's nice to be able to acknowledge the seniors and put on a excursion for them. I understand the work that's been done in relation to consultation and the work in terms of what seniors want and what they don't want. And in actual fact, I spoke to someone today about that, and there was talk about the bus at the Shire being replaced, and that's something I'll talk to the staff about at a later date. But suffice to say, a survey's gone out. Nearly 80% of the people said they would probably or highly likely go on a excursion put on by the Shire on a bus. There is $3,500 in the budget that can be used towards an excursion. And I think that's a good thing. As I said, it's something that the seniors in the Shire can benefit from. It's something that will give them some mental relief in terms of good for the mental, physical well-being and mental well-being is what I'm trying to say. So I would commend option 2, and I thank the officers for their work in this regard.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Councillor Duggan, would you like to speak or reserve?
Thanks, Madam President. I think that Councillor Coles has summed that up nicely, and I'll reserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Madam President. Through the chair, I can understand Councillor Cole's recommendation. I have few points to mention here. I know it's good to get our elder community out for excursions. However, I think during current scenarios with the COVID, the circumstances doesn't allow us to do that. Although there's a budget in this financial year, but in the report, I think we have mentioned the staff is assisting with the Save WA app and other priorities. The other thing in the report we have mentioned, I know the survey has been done, but the good point that has been mentioned is assistance required to participate, which is a pretty good, I think the pickup on the report is Some people would require assistant to participate in the program, including pickup and drop off from home address, storage of wheelchair walkers, assistant to board the bus, which is the major concern because these days we are implementing these 1.52 square meter rules. So basically, these people, some of them might need assistant to board the bus, which is a physical touching or assisting them, which I think in these days we shouldn't be doing that. Option 1, which says, yes, we can continue this in 2022-23 budget setting process, which is good because we have now 3 months, April, May, and June. All our meetings are electronic, and we are in the almost last quarter of the financial year, and the staff is pretty busy in closing out projects, reports, financials, and all that. The other thing is the hygiene. So when we are picking up the wheelchairs and storing them, how are we gonna make sure we are having proper hygiene measures in place? So to me, is option 1, officer's recommendation is stated as it is because it's clearly identified all the concerns that we have. So I will go for option 1 to not to deliver this in this financial year, but seniors are our most vulnerable community. So at the moment we have to save them as a safety reasons. So, and then we are listing number 3 as we continue and consider in 2023, 2022-23 financial year, which is, we're not saying we're not going to do that, but these 3 months we have to monitor COVID cases. We are at peak. Children are getting COVID. Aged care are the main facilities vulnerable. Government organizations being told to stay home as much as they can, work from home scenarios. So to my recommendation is option 1 should be considered for this motion. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Are you foreshadowing option 1 if this motion is lost, Councillor Singh?
Yes, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other councillor that would like to speak for the motion?
Madam President, I reserved earlier. I'd like to speak now, if I may.
Yes, Councillor Duggan.
Duggan, sorry. I take on board what Councillor Singh has said, but I think that it's really important to remember here that many of these elderly people see this as an incredibly good opportunity for them to be out and about and to catch up with people and to do a lot for their good mental health. These people can catch COVID by going to the shops. Appropriate steps would be made. So even though I understand his concerns, I think that that's not as relevant now with triple dosing and with the other steps put in place. I'm sure the council would ensure to make sure that it is a safe event. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Councillor Atwell, do you have a question?
Yes, I did actually. It was similar to what Councillor Duggan just said. I would assume that if there was any chance of, if there was any problems with COVID, etc., that this would not occur. But within the parameters of the motion, does that allow for that?
Councillor Atwell, I'll ask the CEO if he can try and answer the question you have asked.
Madam President, I guess we would apply some common sense there. If COVID outbreak occurred dramatically, then like we have with other situations, I'd probably come and liaise with you about that. But if the current numbers are there, then that motion gives us clear direction to work with. So if council wants to be clearer about that, then they could. But I think we would apply common sense at the end of the day.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Councillor Atwell, does that answer the question you had?
What I say, sort of.
Is there any other councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Councillor Bias, do you have a question?
A question, if I may, Madam President.
Yes.
Councillor Singh raised the proximity issue. Perhaps the Deputy CEO could enlighten me, being far more across the current restrictions than I am. What PPE would we need to supply to staff to enable them to actually practically deliver this?
Thank you through the chair. So we currently have a requirement that all staff wear face masks, and we've got some certain standards for that. So we would apply the standards. We actually currently, as endorsed by council, have a position where staff may only travel in a vehicle at a time. So putting staff in a vehicle, in a bus, along with a number of seniors would be contrary to the position as endorsed by council in itself. For duty of care and risk assessment, I would be concerned about, I don't think that there is enough PPE to offer staff to put them on a bus full of people. I would be concerned for the responsibility that we have as executive staff for the health and safety of our staff members.
Madam President, a supplementary, if I may.
Yes, Councillor Bias.
I've jumped a bit ahead then. Okay, so taking a step back from PPE with the spacing rules and the buses that we have available, like how many people could we practically put on a bus and how many staff could we practically have to assist them?
Thank you through the chair. I'd actually have to have a look. I haven't read any directions in relation to buses. So I actually would have to have a look. We tend to be running by a 2 square metre rule. So for each of our facilities or our meeting rooms, we're doing 2 square metres per person. So that greatly reduces the number of people that you can have in each room. As a risk mitigation, I would want to apply the same, I think. So I'd be looking at the total space area in the bus and doing 2.5 square metres to apply for that as well, so that there is some consistency. But I would need to also check if there are specific directions in relation to buses, because I haven't actually read any.
Thank you, Deputy CEO. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councillor Bias. Is there any other councillors that would like to speak against this motion? Councillor Duggan, you have a question?
Yes, thanks, Madam President. Just a question for the Deputy CEO, if I may. Is the regulations that Transperth use a reliable resource for looking at the buses and how they can be, the elderly people can be placed on a bus?
Director?
Thank you through the chair. I would have a look as well in terms of what's being applied to Transperth, but first and foremost would be consideration of the health and safety and risk assessment for our staff, and that would be what I would apply first.
Thank you, Director.
Thanks.
I'll call again. Is there any other councillors that would like to speak against this motion? Councillor Coles, would you like to close, please?
Yeah, thanks, Madam President. I think common sense, as Mr. CEO quite rightly alluded to, would have to prevail. So if this wave or the peak, whenever that's going to happen with COVID, occurs between now and the end of the financial year, then obviously the excursion wouldn't go ahead. I think that would be, common sense would loom large in that regard. That said, depending on which health advice you listen to or who the chief health officer believes at the current time, and it seems like it's changing almost daily. It's meant to be this week, last week, this week, or next week. But in any event, I think it's unequivocal that the peak will hit by the first week in April. That said, and I understand staff would need more time than less. If we looked at doing an excursion sort of mid to late June, that would, I think, would be suitable. And hey, look, if COVID is still around, or it will be still around, but if we had a peak or we're concerned about things, we just delay the excursion to the next financial year. Is no big deal. I think a couple of salient points have been made. One is, Transperth have rules and regulations. I know getting on a public transport, whether it's a bus or a train, common sense prevails. You have your mask. If you have cold and flu-like symptoms, you don't board the bus or the train or the ferry or the even a plane at the moment. If you get tested for a plane. But notwithstanding that, I think common sense would prevail. And if there's any seniors that did have cold and flu-like symptoms that weren't healthy, wouldn't jump on the bus. So I think we can put mitigation in regards to that. Quite simply, it comes down to the community consultation. As I said, it's about 80% of the people said that they would very likely or highly likely or would may attend an outing. I think that speaks volumes. Obviously, their safety is paramount, and I certainly wouldn't be advocating for anything that puts any person at risk, whether it's the seniors, whether it's our staff or anyone else for that matter. But I think common sense would prevail. I think it has merit. $3,500 in the budget. Let's spend that money. Let's do an excursion for them. And as part of that motion, the second or the last part of it is that we then look at considering the seniors bus excursion moving forward into the 22-23 budget process. So I commend this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Councillor Atwell, are you for or against this motion?
I guess I'm for the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bias, are you for or against the motion?
Against the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Coles, for or against the motion?
For. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor D'Agostino, for or against the motion?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Duggins, for or against the motion?
For the motion, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Singh, for or against the motion?
Against the motion. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councillor Strange, for or against the motion?
For the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Straughtons, for or against the motion?
For the motion.
Thank you. I am against the motion, so the motion is carried 6-3. Thank you, councillors.
And Madam President, can I have the votes recorded, please?
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Minute Secretary, can we please have the votes recorded?
And Madam President, we'll ask Councillor Coles for a reason for the difference in the officer's recommendation once the minute secretary's had a chance to record the votes, please.
Sure. Let me know when you're ready. Thank you. Thank you very much. So just to allow a seniors bus excursion in financial year 21-22. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Councillor Bias, you have a question?
Yes, Madam President. I note that the Deputy CEO took on notice my question. Can we please have circulated to all councillors post-meeting what will actually be cancelled as a result of this decision?
Thank you, Councillor Bias. I'm sure that the Deputy CEO can do that for us. Item 10.4.7, Reconciliation Action Plan Status Update. Can I please have a mover for this motion?
Madam
Madam
President,
President, Councillor Coles, I'd like to move. Sorry, I'll be a gentleman, Councillor Strange. I'll let you go.
thank you, Councillor Coles. Madam President, I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Strange. Can I please have a seconder for this motion? I'm happy to second. Is there anybody opposed to this motion?
Yeah, Councillor Coles is.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Councillor Strange, would you like to open debate, please?
Thank you, Madam President. Last year, the Southwest Settlement was finally effected after many years to resolve native title rights and interests across our state's southwest and the 6 traditional Noongar groups within this region. Amongst other things like economic development opportunities, this agreement provides for an increased role for the traditional owners of the land within the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale in their ongoing management of both land from an environmental point of view, as well as from a cultural heritage perspective. The report presented to us this evening seeks to simplify what is a complex matter, that is one of reconciliation. And although I may have chosen to add some additional aspects as being important, like the significance of the Southwest Settlement, I wholeheartedly agree with the sentiment contained within the report, which is the absolute importance of positive relationship building in pursuing this process, and indeed the importance of pursuing a RAP in the first place. The Southwest Settlement binds the state government, and it will also bind local governments in the way that a number of our core activities are carried out on government reserves in particular. Reconciliation action plans help to build positive relationships. My experience in working with traditional owner groups in the Pilbara is that where there was no positive relationship, the ability to successfully negotiate things like matters pertaining to Aboriginal heritage, including the ability to even source heritage surveys, was severely compromised if that positive relationship wasn't there. This in turn had knock-on implications in terms of time taken to deliver projects and also the cost of implementing projects at all. Whilst a RAP might not be a legislated requirement, progression of such a plan shows both goodwill and an intent to work collaboratively with the traditional owners of the land within our Shire to help find strategies that may contribute towards addressing aspects of Indigenous disadvantage and the appropriate recognition of both the historic and ongoing connection to country that they as traditional owners have. It is for these reasons and my firm personal belief that any funding spent in this area will well and truly save the organisation funds in the longer term, that I commend the officer's recommendation to all fellow councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Strange. I'm happy to reserve. Councillor Coles.
Thanks, Madam President. And look, I'll make a couple of points. One is there is no legal requirement, legislative requirement, which has already been mentioned. So that is a fact. Something that should be done down the track, I think. And again, I'll echo my comments I made at the start of the meeting. That is immediately relevant, responsible and responsive. You know, at the end of the day, this is something that only a handful of local governments have. I think we would be the only tier 2 local government that would have a reconciliation action plan as per the agenda item. And look, I'm a firm believer, and it's not about me, it's not about our personal beliefs, which I think is important. It's not about us as individuals, it's about us as a community and the responsibility that we have to all people, not just Indigenous people. We have a responsibility to all residents and ratepayers within our Shire. So I think that needs to be made clear point. Again, it comes back down to be inclusive. We need to be inclusive to everyone, and I think there is no legal requirement. We have the risk of alienating certain groups in our society by doing things for some and not others. The other comment I would make is it's a $45,000 investment, and I would use that term investment because I certainly have worked in the Midwest Gascoyne area and have worked in remote Western Australia, so I do to some extent echo the comments that have been made, but it is an investment of some $45,000, which I would submit is a significant amount of funds. That's what's said about 14 residents in their rates that they pay. That $45,000 could certainly be used in other areas. This is $45,000 quite simply for us to feel good. It may actually make some difference, and I certainly would understand previous councillors' expertise in this area, so I certainly wouldn't go against that. But what I would say is $45,000 is a significant amount of money. It's an investment that could be used potentially in other areas. We talked earlier about what we need to do as councillors. We need to fix our roads. We need to fix working with small businesses. We need to fix investment in the area. These are all things that the reconciliation action plan may actually assist in. You know, that may well happen, but there's other priorities I think we have as a shire. As I've said, it's a lot of money. Really, it's actions speak louder than words, and I don't believe that a document that's going to cost us $45,000 will change that. I think we as 9 individuals, we as a leadership team, the executive management group can do positive things, and I think the experience we're doing with Kiernan Park and the work we're doing there is all part of that. We don't need a reconciliation action plan for us to be good community citizens, to do the right thing by the traditional owners. So I would certainly foreshadow option 2, and that is that we remove the strategic operation project reconciliation plan from the 21-25 corporate business plan, and that we note that 21-25 corporate business plan will be updated to reflect the amendment through the 21-22 Q3 corporate business plan performance report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Is there anybody that would like to speak for this motion? Councillor Strange, would you like to close, please?
Thanks, Madam President. I don't have a lot to add other than the fact that I would reiterate that I consider money spent in this area will save the Shire money in the long term. My understanding is through the Kiernan Park exercise, we are already experiencing challenges in engaging the Aboriginal community to provide input into that process. And I believe that exercises like pursuing the Reconciliation Action Plan will contribute to building those relationships that will make future engagement much more effective and as such will be cheaper in the longer term. Take it to the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Strange. Councillor Atwell, are you for or against this motion?
For the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Bias, are you for or against the motion?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Coles, for or against the motion?
Against.
Thank you. Councillor D'Agostino, for or against the motion?
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Duggan, for or against the motion?
Sorry, I really struggled with this one. I'll say against. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Singh, for or against the motion?
For, thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councillor Strange, for or against the motion?
For the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Straughtons, for or against the motion?
For the motion.
Thank you. I am for the motion. Motion is carried 6-3. Thank you, councillors.
Madam President, can we please record the votes?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Bias. Item 10.5, Executive Services Reports. 10.5.1, Status Report on of the CEO KPIs.
Madam President, I just wanted to remind the councillors that I have declared a financial interest in this item, but I am choosing to stay as I am happy to answer any questions or discussion about any of the amendments to the KPIs. I see this as a bit different to when the council considers my annual performance review, which I've declared an interest in and a leave, but this is more of a status report on the KPIs. So I've declared the interest and remaining in the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Before I call for a mover and a seconder, I will remind councillors that the attachment to this item is a confidential attachment. So if councillors wish to discuss the attachment, we will need to go behind closed doors. Can I please have a mover for this motion?
Madam President, I'm happy to move this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Strange. Can I please have a seconder for this motion?
Councillor Bias, happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Bias. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 10.5.2, lot 814 Millers Road, Jarrahdale, commercial
Madam
feasibility.
President, could I propose? Oh, sorry.
Commercial feasibility and business case. Can I please have a mover for this motion?
Could I propose an alternative recommendation or alternative resolution before we go to that?
Councillor D'Agostino, what are you proposing?
That we defer the matter for a period of 1 month. I can say the reasons why if you want. We might need to go into behind closed doors that relates to the legal advice, which is confidential.
Councillor D'Agostino, this item has already been deferred for a period of 1 month.
Absolutely.
It has come back to council tonight. It has been to policy concept forums and Q&As of which you weren't in attendance at, and you have not submitted any questions until now.
Madam President, I'm happy to go through the debate now, or we can, discuss it, or we can go behind closed doors.
I'm happy for you to go behind closed doors.
I'd propose that we go behind closed doors to discuss the legal advice.
Yeah, Councillor Coles is happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Is there any councillor opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Mr. Parker?
You